Let's jump right into today's explainer because we're looking at something absolutely massive. We're exploring India's monumental shift from fossil fuels to a highly lucrative clean energy economy. And look, this isn't just your standard save the environment kind of story. We're talking about fundamentally rewriting the economic future of an entire nation. So if you want to understand exactly where global capital is flowing and why the energy landscape is shifting so insanely fast, this is a transition we really need to unpack together.
So let's kick things off with kind of a surprising question. Think about this for a second. What actually happens when a massive ecological challenge is also, simultaneously, an immense multi-billion-dollar financial pressure? You know, we're so conditioned to view environmental action as a pure cost, right? Like a burden that's going to drag down economic growth. But as we're going to see today, in this specific case, the exact opposite is true. The ecological crisis is actively generating this massive financial sinkhole that demands an urgent, large-scale solution purely from a business standpoint.
To really wrap our heads around the scale of this pressure, just look at this staggering number, $123 billion. That is India's projected net crude oil import bill for fiscal year 2026 alone. And you know what's truly alarming about that? That bill is going up even though there's no major increase in the actual volume of oil being imported. We're essentially just paying more for the exact same amount of fuel. India is being forced to export a massive chunk of its wealth just to keep the lights on and the engines running under the current status quo.
But hey, there's a very visceral human cost here too, running completely parallel to the financial one. A shocking 13 out of the 20 most polluted cities in the entire world are right here in India. When you check out the global air quality reports, Barney Hot tops the global list, and Delhi has basically stood as the most polluted capital for 6 consecutive years. People are out there breathing air that sits 10 times above the World Health Organization's safe limits. It's a severe public health emergency layered right on top of an economic drain.
When you add it all up, importing coal and oil accounts for over 20% of India's total import bill. Relying on foreign nations for 88% of its oil drives over $120 billion in capital outflow. And that directly results in a massive $30 billion current account deficit. So why does this matter to you? Well, because this constant thirst for foreign fossil fuels puts relentless pressure on the rupee. It essentially imports inflation, which hits everyone's wallets and drives up the daily cost of living. And you can literally see the consequences in every city and in people's lungs. It makes India the world's third largest annual carbon emitter at 3.2 gigatons, sitting just behind China and the US. Plus, on the Yale Environmental Performance Index, India ranks a sobering 176th out of 180 countries. It's a tough reality to face. This heavy dependency on legacy fossil fuels is quite literally choking the environment while simultaneously straining the national treasury to its breaking point. All right, moving into part 1, a global awakening, the $17 trillion shift. Now, zooming out for a second, this isn't just an isolated domestic issue. The whole world has decided to move. We are looking at a highly compressed timeframe for global action, and it's backed by binding commitments from over 195 countries. By 2030, over 130 countries have agreed to triple global renewable energy capacity to 11,000 gigawatts. By that same year, the target is for 50% of all new global car sales to be electric, which necessitates an immense $4.5 trillion per year in clean energy investment. All of this cascades toward the ultimate Paris Agreement benchmark, reaching net zero global emissions by 2050. And the capital? It's already aggressively flowing to meet these targets. Just think about the sheer magnitude of this number, $16.7 trillion. That's trillion with a T. That is the unfathomable volume of global capital cumulatively invested in clean energy since 2015. And the pace is only accelerating. We're seeing a record $2.2 trillion poured into this sector in 2025 alone, driven by massive renewable additions, surging EV sales, and rapid battery deployments. So the crucial takeaway here is that global markets have spoken loud and clear. Today, for every single dollar going into legacy fossil fuel investments, nearly $2 are flowing straight into clean energy. The smart money is no longer betting heavily on the past. It's aggressively weighting toward the technologies of the future. The financial center of gravity has permanently shifted, which brings us to part 2, the tipping point, where the economics get completely rewritten. And here's where it gets super interesting for India specifically. For India, this massive transition is absolutely no longer just an environmental obligation. It has become a total economic no-brainer. What's truly fascinating is that India has already hit 53.2% non-fossil installed capacity. They achieved their 50% target 5 full years ahead of schedule. The balance of power capacity has officially tipped. Now, while the actual generation share from these sources is currently around 29.2%, there's a massive 176.7 gigawatts of clean energy projects currently under implementation across the country. So you can bet that gap is going to close really rapidly. And the best part? They aren't putting all their eggs in one basket. This diversity in the clean power portfolio significantly reduces single-source risk for all those gigawatts currently under implementation. Solar dominates the mix at 53.1%, but it's heavily supported by wind power at 19.8% and large hydro at 18.2%, alongside biomass and nuclear. So what does that mean? It means if the sun isn't shining, the wind is blowing, or water is flowing, creating a highly resilient, stable grid.
But why the sudden rush? Why is this rapid adoption happening right now? Simple. We've seen a massive 83% drop in solar tariffs since 2010. The price literally fell off a cliff. Because of this, the transition is now economically certain, completely rewriting the math of power generation. We aren't sitting around waiting for green technology to become affordable anymore. It is incredibly affordable today.
To see just how certain it is, let's do a quick cost comparison. Today, solar power costs between 2 to 3 rupees per kilowatt hour. Contrast that with power from new coal plants, which sits at 5 to 6 rupees. If this were a race, solar has decisively lapped coal. It's sitting at a 40 to 50% structural discount today. In fact, recent data shows that even solar power bundled with battery storage is coming in cheaper than new coal in auctions. No way coal can compete with that.
And here is the absolute killer argument: marginal cost. Once you build a coal plant, it bleeds money every single hour it runs because you have to constantly buy and burn fuel. But once you install solar, the marginal cost of the power it generates is virtually zero. The sun delivers the fuel for free, and it never sends an invoice. From an investment perspective, it is virtually impossible to compete with zero marginal cost. So let's move to part 3, the engine, the structural policy support making this all happen. You know, economics might be driving the market, but government policy is the engine ensuring this transition is permanent. From generation to storage, literally every pillar is covered by massive funding. We're talking billions of rupees for offshore wind and green hydrogen, approvals for a massive 43 gigawatt hours of battery storage just to keep the grid stable, and 6,000 kilometers of new transmission lines. Add in a strict mandate for distribution companies to source 24% of their power from renewables, and you've got a comprehensive, targeted push. But here's the absolute masterstroke in all of this: keeping it local. By manufacturing locally, India solves that massive import deficit problem we talked about at the very beginning. They are replacing imported oil dependency with a self-sustaining domestic industry. Instead of bleeding billions of dollars out of the country to buy foreign oil, that capital stays internal. It creates jobs, builds infrastructure, and generates vital export revenue. It's just a complete paradigm shift. So I'm going to leave you with this one thought as we wrap up today's explainer. As this economic gap widens and the tipping point passes into history, how are you positioning yourself for what comes next? The planet is definitely changing, but so is the investment opportunity. Make sure you're paying close attention to where the math is leading us. Thanks so much for tuning in, and keep learning.